Beneath a forgotten academy, Agent Julian Vance discovers puzzle pieces that are the key to controlling a global spy network via Scylla chip implants. When Vance and Dr. Evelyn Reed confront the curator inside his high-tech fortress, they race against time. Vance engages in a final, lethal duel to stop the network's activation, while Evelyn attempts a risky truth transmission to save the world, even if it costs her the life of the father she just found. The early hours of a bleak December afternoon in Fairfax County, Virginia, were swallowed by a dense, chilling fog that rolled in from the nearby Potomac River, blanketing the landscape in a damp, silent gray. The air was heavy with the smell of wet earth and decay, perfectly complementing the desolate atmosphere surrounding the White Creek Academy. This forgotten preparatory school, shuttered since 1970, sat forlornly among the skeletal trees, its decaying architecture serving as a stark monument to secrets long buried. A single high-end sedan, its windows tinted deep black, broke the silence, parked discreetly under a canopy of overgrown vegetation. The occupant was Special Agent Julian Vance, codename Phoenix, an operative who radiated an almost cinematic aura of sophistication and capability. He stood tall, perhaps 6 feet, 2 inches, in a perfectly tailored 3-piece suit of deep navy wool, a deliberate choice that echoed the classic elegance of a spy from a golden age, yet his gear, the miniaturized communications earpiece, the advanced ballistic vest worn discreetly beneath his jacket, and the custom 9mm sidearm, was cutting edge. Vance possessed an intense, focused demeanor, his steel blue eyes perpetually scanning, reflecting a mind dedicated to calculated risk and strategic foresight. His personal history was highly compartmentalized, but his reputation within the agency was flawless, a man who blended lethal efficiency with polished diplomacy. Vance was here because the CIA had confirmed the Academy was the former highly sensitive cover for Project Scylla, a program for selecting adolescents with elite strategic thinking, abruptly terminated and scrubbed from most records. Vance found his local liaison, Superintendent Arthur Jenkins, waiting by the building's skeletal front porch. Jenkins was a man whose routine had clearly been disturbed. A community-minded police official in his late 50s, his face was lined with the fatigue of small-town stress, amplified by the unsettling nature of the current job. He was short, slightly round, and wore a simple brown uniform, maintaining a professional distance born of suspicion toward the federal agencies. Agent Vance, Jenkins nodded curtly, adjusting his thick leather gloves. The area is secured. The cleanup crew found the entry point in the gymnasium floor, near the old wrestling mats. Said they were paid to find, not look. Understood, Superintendent. Your cooperation is valued, Vance acknowledged, his tone smooth and professional, before descending into the cavernous, moldering space of the gym. The discovery site was near the long-abandoned locker rooms, where a section of subfloor had been cleverly engineered to hide a deep staircase leading into a concealed, reinforced bunker. The subterranean room was surprisingly well-preserved, dry, and cold. Dozens of metallic storage boxes, organized on rudimentary shelving, testified to a systematic, classified operation. Vance's attention was immediately drawn to the objects scattered on a heavy wooden table. Hundreds upon hundreds of small, thick paper fragments, curled slightly with age and humidity, spilling from several opened boxes. Vance picked one up. Each piece was identical in size and shape, an intentionally uniform segment, and each contained only one half of a face, a section of an eyebrow meeting a cheekbone, or a nose and a sliver of lip. They were pieces of a puzzle designed to be confusingly simple, yet fundamentally incomplete. A secure satellite link brought him immediate backup. Dr. Evelyn Reed. Evelyn was a stark contrast to Vance's field sophistication, though equally commanding in her own domain. She was a leading light in the CIA's cryptography and data analysis division at Langley, a petite woman in her early 30s with a strong, angular face, framed by practical dark hair pulled back into a severe ponytail. Her eyes, magnified by her square-rimmed glasses, were intelligent and intensely analytical. Evelyn carried a weighty professional seriousness fueled by a deeply personal pursuit of truth, particularly concerning her father, a former Scylla administrator whose official death decades earlier felt unresolved. Agent Vance, Evelyn stated upon arrival, bypassing the fragmented puzzle pieces to focus immediately on the metallic boxes lining the wall. My analysis of the preliminary scan indicates these locks use a non-standard cipher. I believe the sequences are personalized. She ran a handheld scanner over the minute engravings near the hinges. Yes, they correspond to birth dates and initials tied to the original Scylla oversight team. We are looking at a roster of the program's architects, not a simple inventory. Evelyn paused, her gaze locking onto one particular set of initials. Her voice dropped, now edged with a raw, unexpected emotion. One of these matches a colleague who was closely linked to my father. This isn't just a historical artifact. This is a personalized ledger. The implications were immediate. The fragments were not mere historical curiosity, but the keys to a living secret, directly tied to her past. The discovery's significance was brutally underscored when a deep mechanical thrumming sound cut through the silence above the academy, the unmistakable approach of a heavy-duty assault drone. This was followed almost immediately by the sound of boots on gravel and the sharp metallic clack of high-powered weapons being readied. "Company, Doctor," Vance said smoothly, dropping into a defensive crouch and drawing his sidearm in a fluid motion. Someone was monitoring the White Creek frequency. They knew what we found. A figure appeared at the top of the bunker stairs, blocking the exit. This was the Curator, the leader of the infiltrating mercenaries. He was a powerfully built man, dressed in high-end, custom tactical gear over a sleek black uniform. His face, entirely obscured by a high-tech ballistic mask that gave his appearance a chilling, impersonal authority. He moved with the practiced economy of a trained operator holding his rifle steady. The Curator was the embodiment of organized malice, disciplined, determined, and clearly aiming for the fragments. "Agent Vance," the Curator's voice was digitally distorted, low and commanding. "Terminate the operation. Those assets belong to the original shareholders." Vance instantly shoved Evelyn behind a stack of steel filing cabinets, providing cover. "The original shareholders lost control of their assets 40 years ago, Curator." The sharp crack of Vance's pistol shot was immediately answered by a volley of automatic fire that ripped into the abandoned building. Evelyn, clutching the personalized box of fragments, watched in stunned terror as Vance engaged the hostile force, realizing with chilling certainty that the pieces of paper were not just a historical puzzle, but a critical, highly sought-after prize. The escape from White Creek Academy was a precise, high-speed maneuver, orchestrated by Vance's innate ability to exploit tactical chaos. Using suppressed fire to cover Evelyn's dash to the armored SUV, he activated a pre-planted sonic disruptor in the bunker, temporarily blinding the Curator's drone surveillance. They left the academy behind, a smoking testament to the violence the puzzle pieces attracted, and raced toward a secure CIA holding facility in a classified suburban complex known only as the Vault. Evelyn clutched the metallic box, the personalized initials seeming to burn into her palm, the adrenaline slowly giving way to a cold, scientific rage. Once inside the sterile, windowless analysis lab of the Vault, Vance quickly established a guarded perimeter, while Evelyn began the meticulous work of decryption and analysis. The atmosphere was a stark contrast to the decay of the academy. Here, the lighting was fluorescent, the surfaces stainless steel, and the air hummed with the quiet efficiency of cutting-edge technology. Vance, having quickly changed his blood-splattered coat for a fresh, equally impeccable blazer, took on the role of chief investigator. He utilized the brief window of peace to access the sealed historical archives of Project Scylla. The official record states the project ended due to funding dissolution and management mismanagement, Vance reported, leaning against the cold metal console, his gaze fixed on Evelyn. But I found a secondary, non-indexed file fragment. It mentions an unreported incident, a severe breach involving the disappearance of a cohort of the most promising junior candidates, just weeks before the academy was officially shuttered. This confirmed the dark subtext to the location and deepened the mystery behind the separated faces. Evelyn, meanwhile, was immersed in the physical and digital architecture of the puzzle. She meticulously scanned the hundreds of fragments under polarized light, inputting their unique geometric and spectral data into a custom-built decryption algorithm. Dr. Evelyn Reed's genius lay not just in breaking codes, but in understanding the mind of the coder. Her logic-driven worldview often provided clarity where others saw only noise. She had a methodical habit of pushing her thin-rimmed glasses up her nose when concentrating, a small, involuntary movement reflecting the intense energy focusing behind her hazel eyes. After hours of silence, only punctuated by the quiet clicks of her keyboard, she finally spoke. "The fragments are a psychological control mechanism, Agent Vance. They were never meant to form a complete image," Evelyn stated, her voice tight with conviction. "The edges are deliberately designed to repel a match to their other half. The geometry only allows pairing with a fragment from a completely different photo. Think of it. One subject's left eye aligns perfectly with another subject's right ear. The puzzle is unsolvable by design. It forces the handler to be the only person who knows who the actual partners are, creating dependency and unbreakable psychological bonds between agents." This revelation was profound. The puzzle was not about identification, but about controlled partnership. While Evelyn was focused on the design, Vance was tackling the textual evidence. He had finally managed to decrypt a personal, highly encoded diary found hidden near the Scylla manager's workspace, a Dr. Alistair Cross. Cross was a brilliant but morally compromised psychologist who had overseen the Scylla program and later died by apparent suicide. The diary entries were erratic, revealing Cross's growing paranoia about the project's real agenda and his fear of the Guardians, a term he used for those who pulled Scylla's strings. One entry, dated weeks before the academy closed, was chilling. "They are taking the children, not for training, but for modification. I have secured the evidence of the pairings, hidden the roster. The truth must survive, even if I cannot. My last resort is the delivery point." Simultaneously, Evelyn had isolated a nearly invisible smudge on the back of one of the fragments, a piece containing only the lower half of an unfamiliar face. Using a micropolymer lifting technique, she extracted a viable, though minute, DNA sample. She worked feverishly, her professional detachment momentarily failing, her breathing becoming shallow. When the results flashed on the screen, she gasped, pushing herself away from the console. The partial DNA profile showed a significant, though not total, match to her own. "It's him, Vance," she whispered, her hands trembling as she pointed to the screen. "A partial match. It's my father's DNA. He wasn't dead. He was here, involved in this, and that fragment." He touched it. He wasn't just a victim of an accident. He was part of the Scylla project that went dark. Vance stepped closer, his demeanor instantly shifting from investigator to protector. "If your father is alive, Doctor, the curator knows it, and he wants those pieces for a reason directly connected to him." Vance returned to the diary's final entries. The manager, Cross, had written about a delivery point he intended to use before his final despair. The coded coordinates, once decrypted, pointed not to a safe house, but to a historical landmark in the capital. A century-old abandoned venue known as the Orpheum Opera House in downtown Washington, D.C. It was an audacious choice, right under the nose of the intelligence community. They both realized the truth. The Orpheum was likely the location of the complete Scylla roster, or perhaps the location of the missing candidates themselves. They had to move, trusting the cryptic final note of a dead man. The Orpheum Opera House in downtown Washington, D.C. was a monument to gilded decay, a century-old structure where opera had given way to dust and shadows. Located blocks from the National Mall, its dilapidated grandeur was a perfect camouflage for a secret meeting point. The night was clear but bitter, the wind whipping around the high, broken windows of the upper floors as Julian Vance and Evelyn Reed approached. Vance, reverting to the ghost routine he perfected, used specialized optics and a grappling tether to gain access through a ventilation shaft above the stage, avoiding the heavily monitored main entrances. Evelyn followed, her movements surprisingly agile despite her being an analyst, fueled by the conviction that the truth about her father lay within. Inside, the opera house was a labyrinth of velvet-draped boxes and creaking hardwood floors. The air was cold, thick with the smell of mildew and old theater makeup. Following the coordinates from Dr. Cross's diary, Vance led them deep beneath the stage and into the sub-basement where the original stage machinery was housed. There, concealed behind a massive rusted counterweight, they found a small, modern steel door incongruous against the historical brickwork. Vance disabled the magnetic lock with a specialized scrambler, and they stepped into a cramped, highly sophisticated secure room. Not a meeting place, but a legacy archive and surveillance station. Dust covered rows of archaic computers and magnetic tape drives. On a small, bare table, they found what they were looking for: a manila folder containing a second, shorter, typewritten suicide note from Dr. Cross. This one was addressed directly to the agents he had betrayed. The note detailed the ultimate betrayal of Project Scylla. The successful candidates had not merely been psychologically conditioned, but surgically modified. They were implanted with a device, Evelyn whispered, scanning the document on her tablet, her face grim. A microscopic, unique identifier chip, likely in the sternum. The fragments were the psychological cover. The true test was if they could identify their partner without the chip. Vance's gaze fell upon a single, non-encrypted data stick taped beneath the table. He plugged it into his secure reader. It contained a comprehensive list of the candidates and their current high-profile positions across global finance, defense, and politics. The Scylla network, now dormant but intact. This list, and the note explaining the chips, was Dr. Cross's desperate attempt at a legacy of truth. Suddenly, the lights in the archive room flickered violently and died, plunging them into absolute darkness, replaced by the ominous red glow of emergency lighting. A low, synthesized voice, instantly recognizable, filled the room through hidden speakers. The curator. "A commendable find, Agent Vance. And Dr. Reed," the curator taunted. "You found the confession, but the delivery point was never the truth. It was the lure. The trap was sprung, the steel door sealed shut with a deafening hydraulic hiss. Vance immediately engaged his thermal vision, spinning to face the entry point as a gas hissed into the room. It wasn't lethal. It was a sophisticated, non-lethal aerosol designed to neutralize advanced electronics. Vance's comms went dead, his internal tracking and targeting systems instantly jammed. The curator entered the room, flanked by two highly trained, silent operatives wearing full military-grade exoskeletons. The curator himself removed his mask. He was revealed to be Elias Thorne, a man with sharp, ascetic features and cold, calculating dark eyes. He wore a grim, satisfied half-smile. Thorne was a former Scylla operative himself, one of the first cohort, now driven by a megalomaniacal desire to seize control of the network he believed he deserved to lead. "I am a curator of potential agent," Thorne hissed, aiming a pistol specifically at Evelyn. "Your father, Thomas Reed was my mentor, the finest strategic mind Scylla ever produced. He is not dead. He is a strategic asset, currently secured under my protection. He is the key to managing the network, but I need those puzzle fragments, the emotional index, to ensure complete loyalty between the paired agents I am about to activate. Thorne demanded the fragments. Evelyn, realizing the full scope of his plan to enslave the Scylla agents for his own shadow government, refused, clutching the metallic box tighter. The two exoskeleton operatives moved in. Vance, recognizing the futility of using a standard firearm against armored targets, immediately discarded his gun and switched tactics. Using his incredible speed and expertise in Krav Maga, Vance targeted the joints and sensory weak points of the armored suits. It was a brutal, up-close engagement. Vance managed to momentarily disable one operative by severing a hydraulic line with the razor edge of his watch, providing a precious window of distraction. "The main power grid is in the attic, second floor," Vance yelled to Evelyn, using the momentary chaos. "Find the old stage lighting panel." Evelyn, understanding the signal, threw the box of fragments into the air to distract Thorne and bolted toward the service ladder. Thorne, momentarily enraged by the threat to his assets, fired a shot toward Vance. Meanwhile, Evelyn scrambled up the ladder. Reaching the second floor, she located the massive, obsolete stage lighting console, a relic of vacuum tubes and exposed wiring. Working feverishly, Evelyn crossed two main power leads, causing a massive electrical surge that instantly fried the sensitive electronics in the sub-basement and overloading the magnetic lock on the sealed door. The sudden surge slammed the curator against the wall, dropping his weapon and momentarily stunning him. Vance seized the opportunity, throwing a handful of flashbang pellets he'd retrieved from a service pouch toward the incapacitated operatives, blinding Thorne's remaining forces. Thorne, recovering quickly, snatched the metallic box containing the fragments from the floor and raced toward the now unlocked exit. He was injured and furious, but successful in securing his objective. "You have your father's tenacity, Doctor, but I have the pieces now." Thorne spat as he fled into the darkness of the opera house. Vance watched him disappear, choosing to ensure Evelyn's safety over pursuing the fragmented pieces. They had lost the assets, but they had gained the essential knowledge, the chips, the roster, and the devastating truth about Thomas Reed. The chaotic skirmish at the Orpheum Opera House had a silver lining. The capture of one of the curator's heavily armored mercenaries, albeit temporarily incapacitated by Evelyn's quick thinking. Interrogation led the CIA to the new operational center of Elias Thorne, a fortress-like data hub disguised deep within the rugged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, Colorado. The facility, codenamed Aegis, was an abandoned Cold War-era military bunker repurposed with high-grade security, making a direct assault suicidal. Vance, now back at Langley, was handed the mandate to lead the inevitable raid. Special Agent Julian Vance sat in the Situation Room, reviewing holographic blueprints of Aegis. His usual composure was tempered by a new, focused intensity. The personal threat to Evelyn's father had sharpened his resolve. He immediately rejected the conventional frontal assault plan favored by the agency's directorate. Vance's preferred tactic was elegant subversion. He knew that brute force would not only fail to retrieve the fragments, but would also jeopardize the life of Thomas Reed and risk the catastrophic activation of the Scylla network. His objective was now twofold: infiltrate Aegis and enable Evelyn's countermeasure. In a secluded, sealed laboratory nearby, Dr. Evelyn Reed was fighting her own battle. She was racing against the clock to synthesize a counter-frequency, an algorithm of disruption that could override the microscopic identifier chips embedded in the sternums of the Scylla operatives worldwide. She had amassed the recovered fragments and the Scylla roster, confirming the identity and location of hundreds of powerful, unsuspecting people. The emotional pressure of knowing her father was alive and in Thorne's clutches was immense, but she channeled it into fierce intellectual focus. Her lab partner was Dr. Kenneth Miles, a CIA behavioral scientist and cryptology specialist in his late 60s. Dr. Miles was a man of quiet, professorial dedication, thin and meticulous, always wearing a tweed jacket despite the climate-controlled environment. He treated Evelyn like a treasured prodigy, offering quiet, steady encouragement, a vital, grounding presence. The chip is not just a locator, it's a biofeedback device. Thorne can activate a loyalty trigger through resonant frequency, or worse, issue a command that causes neurological shutdown. Evelyn explained to Miles, tapping fiercely on her screen. A simple counter-frequency might scramble the system, but could cause severe neural damage to the hosts. Miles pointed to a nearly illegible scan of Dr. Cross's original notes, which Evelyn had recovered. "Look again, Evelyn. Your father's influence. He was protecting them even then." Evelyn zoomed in on the note, barely visible in the margin of the original code. Veritas est antidotum. The truth is the antidote. This philosophical clue struck Evelyn instantly. The chips were designed to control agents through secrecy and deception. The only safe way to neutralize them wasn't through electronic scrambling, but through a massive, undeniable release of the program's full, devastating truth. The psychological shock of exposure would sever the control link without frying the host's brains. While Evelyn developed the final transmission package, Vance prepared his internal infiltration. He used the fragmented roster to identify a key individual, Daniel Holloway, the chief infrastructure engineer at Aegis. Holloway was an aging Scylla graduate, a man in his early 50s, quiet and highly technical, known for his obsession with systems and order. He was a low-level operative who had been blackmailed by Thorne into managing the fortress's infrastructure after a prior indiscretion. Vance initiated a secure, encrypted line to Holloway, not with threats, but with the full truth of the Scylla network and the fate of Thomas Reed. He leveraged the fear of permanent enslavement, offering Holloway a path to redemption. Holloway, described by his file as a man whose greatest desire was a peaceful, anonymous life, reluctantly agreed to Vance's plan. Create a critical systems diversion and ensure Vance's undetected entry into the core server room. Just as Vance finalized his infiltration plan, he received a high-priority, encrypted burst. It wasn't from CIA command. It was from Thorne. The curator, having monitored Evelyn's frantic digital activity, delivered a chilling message directly to Vance's secure channel. The message included a grainy, real-time image of an elderly man, Thomas Reed, shackled in a secure cell, his face showing signs of captivity, but his eyes still carrying a spark of defiance. "Agent Phoenix!" Thorne's synthesized voice rasped through the speaker. "The doctor is mistaken. Her father is here, at Aegis. He is not in the Allegheny Mountains. If she continues to tamper with the Scylla frequency, he will be liquidated before she finishes the next line of code. Tell her to stop. Now." The dual decision was immediate and brutal. Vance had to proceed with the infiltration under the threat of Thomas Reed's execution, while Evelyn had to risk her father's life to ensure the safety of hundreds of Scylla operatives worldwide by preparing the final truth transmission. The attack on Aegis was on. The assault on Aegis, high in the unforgiving Colorado Rockies, commenced under a cloak of heavy snow that masked the approach of the CIA's specialized insertion team. Julian Vance, preferring stealth over spectacle, bypassed the main deployment, utilizing the entry points discreetly opened by the conflicted engineer, Daniel Holloway. Vance moved through the subterranean fortress like a phantom, his focus laser-sharp on the Central Command Room, CCR, where Elias Thorne, the curator, was preparing to unleash his global network. Simultaneously, Dr. Evelyn Reed, despite Thorne's lethal threat, was making her own desperate infiltration. Protected by Vance's diversion, she descended toward the labyrinthine server farm, the fortress's nerve center. The contrast between her highly analytical mind and the brute force reality of the mission was never sharper. She carried no weapon, only a highly encrypted data package. The truth transmission. Evelyn's determination was iron-willed, overriding the terror of her father's immediate danger. She was focused on the greater good, a difficult choice that Vance had implicitly trusted her to make. Vance reached the CCR, a vast room dominated by panoramic monitors displaying a dizzying overlay of geopolitical data. Elias Thorne stood at the primary console, his fingers hovering over the activation sequence, his face twisted in messianic fervor. "You're too late, Agent Phoenix," Thorne sneered, glancing at the intrusion alert. "In 60 seconds, the Scylla network will be reborn, loyal only to me. Your government is about to have a very bad day." "Your reign ends here, Elias," Vance responded, his voice calm, projecting absolute authority. He noticed the metallic box containing the precious puzzle fragments sitting open near Thorne's console, ready for use as a psychological trigger. "The pieces were never meant for you to finish. They were meant to keep the lie intact." Thorne did not waste time with dialogue. He grabbed a titanium baton, moving with the cold, practiced violence of a former elite operative. The duel was one of precision versus power. Thorne, fueled by rage and desperation, swung with lethal force, while Vance parried and countered with the fluid, defensive elegance that defined his style. Vance's aim was not to defeat Thorne quickly, but to delay him just long enough for Evelyn to succeed, while simultaneously maneuvering to keep Thorne away from the activation sequence button. Meanwhile, Evelyn reached the server farm. It was guarded by a single, heavily armed mercenary named Sergeant Cole, a man of immense physical stature and simple, unwavering loyalty to Thorne, earned through decades of service together. Cole was massive, with a shaved head and a scarred face that hinted at a long, brutal past. His loyalty was his only defining characteristic. "Access denied, Doctor," Cole grunted, raising his rifle. Evelyn, desperate, didn't fight. She used her, intelligence. "Thorne will activate the Scylla chips in 60 seconds. He knows the consequence of neural shutdown. He doesn't care about you, Cole. He only cares about the network." Evelyn quickly pulled up the full Scylla roster Vance had given her. "You were a test subject too, weren't you? Check your own file. Thorne set this entire system to fail. The truth is the only way out for all of you." The emotional gamble worked. Cole, his imposing facade momentarily cracked by doubt, lowered his weapon fractionally, distracted by the terrifying thought of the chip in his own sternum. That fraction of a second was all Evelyn needed. She dashed past Cole and jacked her external drive into the core server's uplink port. With one final, trembling breath, she executed the command. The Truth Transmission, a package containing the detailed history of Project Scylla, the forced partnership mechanism, the surgical implantations, and Thorne's megalomaniacal intentions, was instantaneously broadcast on all encrypted military and private channels linked to the Scylla network. Back in the CCR, the monitors flashed violently. Thorne, distracted by the global alert indicating the system compromise, paused his attack on Vance. "No, you fool!" Thorne screamed, recognizing Evelyn's countermeasure. The Truth Transmission was the antidote. Across the globe, high-ranking officials felt a sudden, profound neurological shift as the psychological programming, the Scylla influence, shattered. The network was instantly neutralized. Vance seized the moment of Thorne's distraction, delivering a devastating counterstrike that disarmed and incapacitated the curator. Thorne was subdued and taken into CIA custody, his ambition collapsing with the network he sought to control. With the threat neutralized, Evelyn rushed to the coordinates Thorne had sent to Vance. Deep within the fortress's secure wing, she found a highly reinforced isolation chamber. Inside, Thomas Reed, thinner, older, but very much alive, looked up. He had staged his death decades ago, believing that only from the shadows could he one day develop a solution to Project Scylla. "The pieces don't fit together, Elle," Thomas said, his voice weak but clear, using her childhood nickname. Because the true solution wasn't finding your other half in the puzzle, but finding your own truth. They were a lie meant to control. You broke the control. In the warm glow of the sun finally cresting the Rockies, Julian Vance and Evelyn Reed stood together, watching Thorn and the remnants of Aegis being neutralized. Project Scylla was irrevocably destroyed. Thomas Reed was granted immunity and reunited with his daughter, the missing piece of her life finally restored. The story concluded as Vance, ever the professional, gave Evelyn a look that was more than partnership. It was a shared understanding forged in fire. They became the CIA's new perfect picture, the lethal field. Agent and the brilliant analyst, two individuals, each complete on their own, finding the professional and personal balance that the flawed Scylla project had sought to force. Vance returned the last fragment of the puzzle to Langley Storage, knowing his greatest asset wasn't a gadget, but the woman beside him.